I saw a couple articles here in the beginning that I'll show you that kind of have the same theme about too much power, especially in the media and kind of a form of censorship. The president has become too powerful, says Jack Welch from today, October 11th. The president has become too powerful relative to Congress, says the former GE boss, Jack Welch, told CNBC on Friday, as optimism increased for a debt ceiling, blah, 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 right? They always have to tag that on there. Bring it into the debate. Obama's efforts to control media are most aggressive since Nixon. The Obama regime has chilled the flow of information on issues of great public interest, according to a Thursday report. It amounts to an indictment of the president's campaign pledge of more open government, so hope and change. A report from the Committee to Protect Journalists, a nonprofit group, said that Obama has fallen short on his promises of a transparent government, while at the same time forging ahead with an unprecedented effort, the most aggressive since President Nixon, to silence the government officials and the media at large. 6 government employees plus 2 contractors, including Snowden, have been subject to felony criminal prosecution since 2009 under the Espionage Act of 1917. In 2008, his campaign speech was, "I'll make our government open and transparent so that anyone can ensure that our business is the people's business. No more secrecy." James Wood says he does not expect to find work in Hollywood again after criticizing President Obama after posting messages on Twitter calling Mr. Obama a true abomination. He was asked by followers if he thought his comments could cost him jobs. Basically, his quote is saying, "I don't expect to work again. I think Barack Obama is a threat to the integrity and the future of the republic. My country first," he wrote in response. So he's actually a registered Democrat, but has been an outspoken supporter of many Republican politicians, including George W. Bush. So I don't know how much that's worth in that quote, but you had what John Lovett is saying, too. He kind of had his little, he was kind of a Democrat, I think, too. Maryland says here they have this cyberbullying law with direct line to Facebook to remove content without societal value. It started in Nova Scotia. They said here the worst cyberbullying law. This was prompted by the suicide of a teen. As a result, laws like this get passed purely on subjective levels. So if someone feels offended, they can press charges utilizing a non-adversarial process that allows the accuser to present his or her case directly to a judge who then decides whether or not it's actually cyberbullying. It opens the accused up to civil proceedings, criminal charges, and a chance of being banned not just from social media, but from the internet entirely, along with being banned from using electronic devices like a phone. Maryland's anti-cyberbullying law, Grace's Law, is also the byproduct of a charged reaction to a teen's post-bullying suicide. Tuesday, the new law took effect, and they have a joint initiative with Facebook and the National Association of Attorneys General. But says the targets of the new program include persons who are not committing a crime. We're not going to go after you, but we're going to take down the language off Facebook because there's no redeeming societal value and it's clearly hurting somebody. Mossad resorts to threats to block agents' family life documentary. The Israeli Secret Service has gone to great lengths to prevent the production of a documentary looking at the lives of its agents from a personal perspective, but filmmakers reportedly saw their interviews and canceled it under pressure from Mossad. The report deals with the dangers of being a Mossad agent's child. We talked about facial reconstruction that Mossad agents underwent as part of their change of identity. Damn. And examined if the agency used female agents as seductresses. And that's actually something that I believe all governments use, all intelligence agencies. The CIA plans to shutter public access to foreign news service after more than 50 years. Many journalists and researchers have relied on the foreign press. But it goes on here and says that they could lose access at the end of the year. CIA's open source centers decided to halt its information feed to publicly accessible World News Connection, WNC, as of December 31st. So far, it says here that it's been administered by the Department of Commerce. Members of the public have enjoyed a wealth of information collected by the U.S. intelligence from unclassified open sources around the world. But they say here that it costs too much money or it'll save them money. But they say it's a headache to operate. Well, it's God forbid, the government's gonna help the quote public, right? Who funds them? They'd rather spend more time on spying on people and starting proxy wars, and giving these huge tactical military vehicles out to police departments and subsidizing these huge corporations that basically exploit people. This is my website, ggnonline.net. On YouTube, my channels are DDarko 2012 and DDarko 2013. Okay, so I have some interesting news to get to in these articles. NSA's Utah Spy Supercenter crippled by power surges. You guys have probably seen this, but they've actually had a bunch of blackouts, or basically power surges. The NSA chose Utah basically because they had the abundance of cheap electricity, but it continuously uses 65 megawatts, which could power a small city, at least 20,000 people, at a cost of more than $1 million a month. But it says here they don't have a reliable electrical system that runs computers and keeps them cool. Lastly, backup generators have failed numerous tests according to the project documents, and officials disagree about whether the cause is understood. Let's talk about deception in the media, but deception from the government. This is kind of a horrible story. How Pentagon, but not surprising, right? How Pentagon faked repatriation of fallen soldiers for years with phony ceremonies, decommissioned planes and bodies that had spent months in the lab. But it says remains were taken off planes and coffins draped with flags while taps played, and then attendees sang the Star-Spangled Banner, suggesting that the fallen soldiers had just returned. The Pentagon now admits that the ceremonies were held on defunct planes after remains had been in the lab for months. Yeah, it says here often the attendance attended by a tearful audience. They're not actually anybody in those coffins. In fact, coffins are towed out of planes that can no longer even fly, must be towed onto the runway for the phony ceremonies, and remains have sometimes been back in the country for months. So they used to call them repatriation ceremonies, but it says now the events will be known as honor ceremonies. The name changed because they have already arrived, technically, says an Army Staff Sergeant. In this picture, the moment a biker gang cop was arrested while undercover with Occupy protesters, and the day his double life was shaken when he was confronted with being a rat. So this is kind of like The Departed, I think that movie was. It's funny because we were saying that this could possibly be a psyop. But it went on and says here that this one individual, this undercover cop, inveigled his way into protesters' hearts and won their trust, reads like a plot of a countless movie. And I just think it's ironic that they come out and say it like that, because that's exactly what I thought about the biker gang. The biker gang just in itself was something like a movie, so it makes sense that the people that were involved in it were actually police. Cover blown when he was accused of taking part in a brutal biker gang attack. Occupy protesters have revealed their betrayal and exactly how he inveigled his way into their movement. Once arrested at Grand Central Station, he was willing to empty toilets to win trust and encourage violence and protest. I was saying some of the places to keep an eye on as far as South America, we're talking about Yemen and stuff, Somalia and Africa, but also South America, and the heart of it, of course, would be Brazil. Hearing about these teacher strikes and protests, and I covered that about how all this stuff was happening with the teachers all of a sudden. And then you have this, look at anarchists hijack Brazil teacher protests. So in other words, the Brazilian police are there to provocateur and create violence. Blame it on the protesters. So this guy from the New York biker thing, he pretended to be homeless, but returned to his $400,000 condo, go to flashy nightclubs, and drove expensive cars and motorcycles. One protester even confronted him about being a cop, but he nervously laughed off the suggestion. The cop responsible for investigating the role of the policeman in the vicious biker gang attack admits he too was part of the ride. So see, he just admitted being part of the ride a few days ago. Mainstream media buries the 21% surge in unemployment claims in a one-week story. Retail and restaurant sales are collapsing. The average American, it says here, is barely getting by on their low-wage, part-time jobs. Now Obamacare has arrived to crush whatever momentum the economy had. Yeah, the U.S. jobless claims, according to Market Watch, leaped from 66,000 to 374,000. I've covered this before in the past. Foxconn using forced labor to build Sony PS4s. Students have been told if they refuse to participate, they lose 6 course credits, which effectively means they will not be able to graduate. It's considered an internship and publicly recognized and promoted by the school. And the students said once they were there, they were assigned jobs that had no relation whatsoever to their field of study, including grunt work like distribution and shipping, so easy slave labor. But internship jobs themselves I don't really like because they're just exploiting you for free labor. I went through that, because to get a job, you got to have experience. Well, how do you get experience? We got to get a job. So at some particular point, these bastards, these companies have to hire somebody, right, so they can get experience. Well, you got to work for free. You got to be exploited. It'd be one thing if you were being an apprentice where you actually got your training and then you worked, quote, for free. You're basically working for your training. But then when you're done, graduate, you get a job. I guess that's how they view internships as. Elite social worker course attracts 1,000 graduates, but Frontline will take only the best 100. What is this? These are kidnappers, state kidnappers. Rigorous government-backed test models on MI5 recruitment to create robust child protection teams. So they're going to use the MI5 type training to get these state abductors. Pennsylvania prison guards make inmates fight for snacks. 3 correctional officers in the U.S. state of Pennsylvania have been accused of organizing inmate fights, rewarding the winners with food and coffee. Principal cancels class because of the fine weather, saying it's just too nice for students and staff to be cooped up all day. So it sounds reasonable, right? But of course, this article is going to tell you that's very bad because that's a brainwashing camp to tell them that everything in this messed up world is the way it's supposed to be. Remember those moments when a teacher decides to allow the class to have their lesson outside to take advantage of the good weather? One teacher has gone further than that and has called off classes because of the sunshine. Sounds a lot worse than what it really is, but it says here that he basically made a promise or a commitment to find a happy reason to cancel classes before he retires at the end of the year, mostly because schools have been canceled because of bad weather for years. A teacher makes students decide who lives and who dies. This classroom of 14 and 15-year-olds in Illinois high school was assigned the task of deciding the fate of 10 fictional characters, an exercise that critics called a lesson in death panels. Interesting, so they had 10 people who were in desperate need of kidney dialysis. According to their worksheet, the students opted to spare the doctor, right, the drug peddler for the pharma companies, the lawyer of this blind justice system, the housewife, which I guess is cool, the teacher, which brainwashes people, the cop, which enforces the political and the tax system, monetary system, and a Lutheran minister, which, to me personally, just promotes more control over the masses, mind control. Among those who dispatched to the hereafter were an ex-convict, a prostitute. So, most people that do their jobs that they don't want to do, they fall into, you're selling yourself, you're selling your time, you're renting out your body, your energy, your time, you're prostituting. College students, I guess apparently college students don't have much worth, they're just in debt, right? And a disabled person. So you see a lot of the people, the masses now, watching television, turning into potato-looking people. They're technically, physically, and mentally disabled as well. So, quick point about the ex-convicts. That movie, The Dark Knight Rises, with the Joker, or Heath Ledger's character, where he bets it all that you have a ferry boat full of ex-cons, or basically prisoners, and a ferry full of regular, hard-working, law-abiding, tax-paying citizens, and to see who, give them both the clicker to see who they would blow each other up. And of course, he was wrong, right? Because both of them decide to click the button. You can be rest assured they probably would most likely would have blown each other to bits, or that the innocent civilians would have definitely tried to blow up the prisoners. Use that rationale too. But that's the programming, they stick it in there at the end, the major plot point, because you don't want the villain, like Heath Ledger's character, actually to be right about society. Speaking of wearing makeup, is it a betrayal? One woman's dramatic transformation sparks an online backlash about cosmetics. I guess that's the before, that's the after. I think a real form of betrayal and deception is these transgenders Anyways, this is GGN, and I'm Darko. Thank you.